All right, so today we're going deep into INSEAD.
The business school for the world.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And you've given us a Harvard Business School case study to work with.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we can really go behind the scenes
Well,
and
congrats.
figure out how they actually built this global model.
Should be interesting.
Yeah. Now, we all know that INSEAD is famous for its global approach, but the case study really dives into their dual campus model,
Go.
Fontainebleau and Singapore, and how that all started. And then, of course, we'll unpack their partnership with Wharton.
Sounds good.
So are you ready?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, so first things first. INSEAD was founded back in 1957.
Okay.
Now, back then, having a global knowledge and learning network wasn't exactly
Right.
a common goal for business schools.
No, not at all.
Like, they were really ahead of the curve.
Yeah, very much so.
And what was really interesting in the case study was Dean J. Frank Brown.
Yeah.
He really had this vision for what INSEAD could be.
Yeah.
He's actually quoted in the case study as wanting INSEAD to be seen as the world's preeminent business school
Wow.
for training the next generation of transcultural leaders who can step off a plane straight into effective management anywhere in the world.
That's a big vision.
It's huge. Like, I don't even know how you even begin to put that into practice.
Ah,
But the thing is, they actually kind of pull it off.
they do.
So it really does make you wonder how they translated that vision
Yeah.
into a concrete reality.
Well, I think one of the big elements of that is their one-year MBA program.
Okay, so talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so it's this super intense, super focused program, and it's designed to basically cram the same level of learning as a typical two-year program
Into 1 year.
into 1 year. Yeah, and that efficiency is a big draw for a lot of students.
Right. Especially if you don't want to be out of the workforce.
Yeah, exactly.
It's too long.
Right, you can get back out there and start using your new skills.
So do you think that cramming everything into 1 year means, sacrificing depth in certain areas?
That's a really good question.
Or how does the academic rigor,
Yeah.
compare to those longer programs?
Yeah, I think it's a valid concern, but I think it's also a strategic choice.
Okay.
Like they're clearly focusing on certain things
All right.
and
Yes.
and really going deep in those areas.
Okay, so what are those areas? What do they seem to prioritize?
Well, it seems like it's about building those core business fundamentals and those global leadership skills.
Just someone's already kind of
That's
driven and looking to...
Exactly. Like they're not starting from scratch.
Yeah, okay.
These are people who already have some experience
Yeah,
and they're ready to take their career to that global level.
okay, that makes a lot of sense. So speaking of global,
Mm-hmm.
we got to talk about the two main campuses. Fontainebleau,
Right outside of Paris.
yeah, and then Singapore,
Uh-huh.
and then there's that partnership with Wharton,
Yeah, that's really interesting.
which is so unique, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Students actually get to
I haven't seen that.
spend time at Wharton and other
I'm not
programs.
part of their INSEAD MBA, so
Yeah, and that whole multi-campus model,
right.
it's really at the heart of what makes them different.
Right, so it's not just lip service.
Exactly. They're putting their money where their mouth is, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay, so how does that actually play out in the student experience?
Well, just imagine this. Over 70 nationalities in a single MBA class.
Whoa.
That's
Wow.
incredible. Just the diversity of
Phenomenal.
perspectives in those classrooms.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure it comes with its own set of challenges, but
Oh, I bet.
it's got to be amazing,
Yeah.
just the learning that happens there.
Yeah, I mean, I bet navigating those classroom dynamics takes a certain skill set.
It does.
It's not every day you're discussing,
No.
business strategy with people from
Right.
so many different backgrounds and cultures. And in INSEAD, actually, they know this. They require students to know 2 languages upon entry,
Oh, wow.
and they have to learn a third by graduation.
3 languages.
Yeah.
That's intense.
That's a serious commitment.
Wow. Okay, and they fit that into a 1-year program.
Yeah, it's packed.
That's amazing. Okay, so speaking of fitting things in, I'm curious about the decision to open a campus in Singapore.
Okay.
Like, that wasn't a random choice.
No, not at all.
So why Singapore?
Well, they recognize Singapore as this strategic hub.
Okay.
It's perfectly positioned for understanding
Okay.
those Asian business practices.
Right.
And, at the time,
Yeah.
Asia was this booming economy.
Yeah.
And they already had a research focus on Asia.
Okay.
So it really made sense for them to have a presence there.
So they weren't just
No, they were being strategic.
chasing a trend,
They were just
Hit
with
discriminate.
thinking long term.
thinking about the future of business.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's a smart move.
Right.
Now, these case study talks a bit about the student experience in Singapore, and it sounds pretty unique.
It does.
So what's it actually like to be a student there?
Well, INSEAD really emphasizes that the academic experience is similar across both campuses.
Okay.
But being in Singapore, you just have this unparalleled access to the Asian markets and that cultural immersion.
Makes sense.
And students, they rave about the intimacy of the Singapore campus and that close-knit global community.
Yeah, I'm sure those personal connections are really invaluable, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, to have classmates and faculty from all over the world, that must create a powerful network.
For sure. But, it's not all sunshine and roses.
Okay.
There are some challenges that come with that hyperdiversity.
Yeah. What are some of those challenges?
Well, just thinking about teaching and learning in such a dynamic environment.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not easy. You've got all these different cultural norms around communication and feedback.
Exactly. It takes real skill to manage that.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what works in one culture might be completely misinterpreted in another.
Absolutely. It takes sensitivity and awareness.
And probably a lot of patience.
Definitely. A lot of patience.
Yeah. Okay, so the case study mentions that they have these events called National Weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Where students can kind of showcase their cultures.
It's a cool idea.
Yeah. So it sounds like a fun way to, break down the stereotypes and build understanding.
In a more informal setting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the vision. We've talked about the structure, the student experience.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think for a lot of people, an MBA is about career impact, right?
For sure.
So does this global approach actually translate into global opportunities for INSEAD's graduates?
That's the big question.
That is the big question.
Yeah. But the case study seems to suggest that the answer is yes. Like having that campus in Singapore, it really opened up a lot of opportunities in Asia that wouldn't have been as accessible before.
So we're not just talking about theoretical knowledge here. We're talking about real world career advantages.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not just about, learning about different cultures in the abstract. It's about having the skills and the connections to actually succeed in those markets.
So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about how that plays out in practice.
Yeah.
What kind of
For sure.
opportunities did it actually open up for graduates?
Let's dig into that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
So before the Singapore campus, European placements dominated.
Okay.
Something like 80% of INSEAD grads ended up in Europe.
Okay.
But by 2006, that number had dropped to just over 50%.
Whoa, that's a huge shift.
Yeah.
So where are those graduates going instead?
Asia, primarily. The case study mentions that 20% of the 2007 graduating class found jobs in Asia.
Okay.
And that number was on the rise.
So it sounds like the Singapore campus was kind of the game changer for INSEAD graduates looking to work in that region.
Yeah, for sure.
But was it just the location, or did INSEAD do anything specific to connect those graduates with Asian companies?
Oh, yeah. They were really proactive.
Okay.
They didn't just sit back and wait for the opportunities to roll in.
Okay.
They engaged in market development.
Okay.
They promoted their graduates to Asian companies.
Okay, so what did that look like in practice?
Networking events, career fairs, building relationships with recruiters, all that good stuff.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it wasn't all smooth sailing?
No.
Did they face any specific challenges placing graduates in those Asian jobs?
One interesting challenge the case study highlighted was salary expectations.
Okay.
A lot of Asian companies back then just couldn't afford to pay the same salaries that graduates were used to.
Yeah, in Europe or the U.S.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's a really interesting point. So how did INSEAD overcome that hurdle?
Well, they didn't just encourage graduates to take a pay cut.
Okay.
They really saw it as an opportunity to educate companies about the value of hiring top MBA talent.
Interesting.
Even if it meant a higher upfront investment.
Okay. That's a pretty bold move. So did that strategy pay off?
It seems like it did.
Okay.
The case study doesn't give us specific data on that.
Right.
But it suggests that INSEAD's efforts help to shift perceptions and open doors for their graduates.
That's pretty impressive. Okay, so we've talked about how the Singapore campus really opened up career opportunities in Asia.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the student experience for a moment.
Okay.
Did the Singapore campus attract a specific type of student?
Initially, INSEAD had to actively encourage students
Really?
to choose the Singapore campus.
Okay.
But by 2007, it wasn't necessary. The Singapore campus had built its own reputation.
Okay.
The case study actually mentions that most European students
Wow.
were choosing to start their MBA in Singapore.
That's a big shift.
Yeah, pretty big.
So what do you think drove that change?
I think it was a combination of things. Obviously, the allure of experiencing Asia firsthand,
Right.
but also the career opportunities we just talked about.
Makes sense. Students want to be where the jobs are.
Exactly.
But what about the academic experience? With two campuses on opposite sides of the world,
Right.
how did INSEAD ensure consistency in the program?
Well, they guaranteed students the opportunity
Okay.
to spend at least one period outside their starting campus.
So even if you started in Fontainebleau,
Exactly.
you could experience Singapore.
You got it.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But how do you make sure the academic experience is consistent across both campuses?
Well, they really emphasize
Okay.
maintaining academic parity.
Okay.
The core curriculum is essentially identical, with only minor variations in electives.
Based on faculty expertise and regional relevance.
Exactly.
So you're not missing out on anything
Right.
by choosing one campus over the other.
At least in terms of the core curriculum.
Okay. But I imagine the Singapore campus still has a bit more of an Asian flavor.
Inevitably.
Yeah.
Yeah, guest speakers, company visits,
Right.
even some of the case studies
Okay.
reflect that unique business context.
So they found a good balance
Yeah.
between global consistency
Mm-hmm.
and regional relevance.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, but what about the social aspect?
Okay.
Did students feel like they were getting the same INSEAD experience?
Yeah, so the social experience did differ.
Okay.
Singapore, being smaller, had a more intimate community.
Okay.
Students found it easier to connect with faculty and peers.
Which makes sense. Fontainebleau is probably a little bit different.
Yeah, much larger student body,
Yeah.
proximity to Paris,
Right.
more of a traditional campus experience. Really comes down to personal preference.
Right. Some people might thrive in that smaller environment.
Exactly.
Others might want the energy of Fontainebleau.
For sure.
Okay, so we've talked about the logistical challenges
Yeah.
of a dual campus model,
Uh-huh.
the academic challenges.
Right.
But what about the curriculum itself?
Good.
How did they ensure that it was truly global in scope?
Well, they were very intentional about it.
Okay.
They didn't just tack on a few courses about doing business in Asia.
Right.
They really wanted to infuse that global perspective into all of their courses.
So whether it was finance,
Yeah, finance, marketing,
organizational behavior,
Yep.
everything was taught through an international lens.
that was the goal.
Can you give me a specific example of how they did that?
Sure. So the case study mentions Professor Douglas Weber.
Okay.
He teaches international political analysis,
Okay.
and he actually adapts the content of his course.
Depending on where he's teaching.
Exactly. So in Fontainebleau, he focuses more on European integration, while in Singapore, he delves deeper into topics like Korean reunification
Oh, interesting.
and the relationship between China and Taiwan.
Okay, so really tailoring
Yeah.
the content to the location,
Mhm.
that makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Sounds like they put a lot of thought into
Yeah,
making that curriculum relevant and engaging
for sure.
for students from all different backgrounds.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But creating a global curriculum,
Right.
that's only half the battle.
Yeah, what's the other half?
The real challenge is managing all those different perspectives in the classroom.
I bet.
I mean, you have students from over 70 nationalities.
Wow.
Just imagine the range of opinions
Yeah.
and viewpoints that come up in those discussions.
That sounds like it could go off the rails pretty easily.
It could,
Yeah.
yeah, if not handled carefully.
So how did the faculty handle that?
Well, they had to be incredibly skilled
Yeah.
at facilitating discussions,
Right.
navigating those cultural differences.
Right, because students
Yeah.
come in with
Totally different expectations,
different communication styles.
different comfort levels with expressing their opinions.
Right. I can imagine that could be very challenging.
It is.
So how do you avoid those pitfalls?
Well, they really focused on creating a learning environment
Okay.
where students felt safe and respected,
Okay.
regardless of their background.
Makes sense.
They encouraged open dialogue,
Okay.
challenging each other's assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
but always with respect and curiosity.
It's not just about learning about different cultures.
Well,
It's about learning how to think differently.
exactly.
And that's valuable no matter where you go.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
INSEAD recognizes
Yeah.
that a truly global education is about more than just knowledge.
Right. It's a mindset.
It's a mindset.
Okay. So we've talked about curriculum, faculty, student experience.
Yeah.
But what about the big picture?
Okay.
How did INSEAD communicate its unique value proposition to the world?
That's a great question.
Did people even understand what they were trying to do?
It seems like that was a challenge for them initially.
Really?
Yeah. Dean Brown, he took over in 2006.
Okay.
He felt that INSEAD hadn't done a good enough job explaining its global model,
Interesting.
especially to a U.S. audience.
Okay, so why do you think they struggled to get the message across?
Well, a lot of people still associated INSEAD with France.
Okay.
They didn't fully grasp the extent of their global reach
Right.
and their commitment to diversity.
So they were seen as,
Yeah, they were seen as a great European business school.
but not a truly global one.
Exactly.
Okay, so how did Dean Brown change that narrative?
Well, he was very hands-on.
Okay.
He spent a lot of time talking to CEOs and business leaders in the U.S.,
Okay.
explaining INSEAD's unique value,
Okay.
showcasing their graduates' achievements.
So showing them that it wasn't just another business school, it was
Right.
something different.
It was a global talent pipeline.
That's a good way to put it. Okay, so did his efforts pay off?
It seems like they did. Applications increased
Okay.
during his tenure, especially from U.S. students.
So people started to see INSEAD differently.
Yeah, I think so.
That's great.
Yeah.
So INSEAD has overcome a lot of challenges on its journey to becoming a truly global business school.
A lot of hurdles, yeah.
But what about the future?
Okay.
What does the case study tell us about where INSEAD is headed?
That's a great question.
What do you think the future holds for INSEAD?
Well, the case study hints at a few things.
Okay.
Further expansion,
Okay.
maybe into new regions,
Okay.
continued focus on innovation in global business education.
Do you think they'll be able to maintain their position as a leader?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it's hard to say for sure,
Right.
but I think they're in a really strong position.
Yeah.
They've built a solid foundation,
Yeah.
and they seem to be constantly adapting
Right.
to stay ahead of the curve.
It's pretty amazing what they've accomplished.
It is.
But I'm wondering, do you think their model is sustainable?
That's a good question.
Like in the long run?
Yeah.
I mean, 2 full-fledged campuses,
Right.
global faculty,
Mm-hmm.
a vast network of recruiters.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be incredibly
Resource
resource-intensive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a model that every institution can replicate.
Right.
But I think INSEAD's success shows that there's a real demand
Yeah.
for this kind of global education.
Yeah.
And as the world becomes even more interconnected,
Right.
I think that demand is only going to grow.
So this brings up another question.
Okay.
How can we democratize global education?
That's $1 million question.
Right.
Yeah.
How can we make those benefits
Mhm.
of a global mindset
Right.
accessible to more people?
Yeah, people who might not be able to attend a school like INSEAD.
Exactly.
That's a tough one.
Uh,
But I think technology has a huge role to play.
yeah, I was just thinking that. Like,
Yeah.
we've already seen how INSEAD uses technology to connect its 2 campuses, but I feel like we're just scratching the surface
I agree.
of what's possible.
Oh, for sure.
Like, imagine virtual reality classrooms
Oh, wow.
where students from all over the world could interact with
Mm.
each other and faculty in real time.
That'd be amazing.
That would be incredible. They could
Mm.
go on virtual field trips,
Right.
experience different cultures firsthand.
And it's not just about the fancy technology either.
Right.
We could also leverage online learning platforms
Yeah.
to offer more interactive and engaging courses
Okay.
on global topics.
Right. And make that kind of education
Exactly.
more accessible,
More affordable.
more affordable.
Yeah. And I think there are some great resources out there already,
Yeah.
but we need to make them even better.
Okay.
And we need to make sure everyone has access to them.
I think that's a crucial point.
It is.
If we really believe in this
Yeah.
power of a global mindset,
Mm-hmm.
then we need to make sure it's available to everyone,
Absolutely.
not just a privileged few.
And, it's not just about individual access either.
Right.
It's also about fostering collaboration
Okay.
between institutions around the world.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Well, imagine joint degree programs
Okay.
where students can earn credits
Okay.
from multiple universities in different countries.
That would be amazing.
It would be, wouldn't it?
A truly global education.
Exactly.
So while INSEADs might not be a model that every institution can copy,
Right.
I think their story offers valuable lessons
Absolutely.
for anyone who's passionate about, really democratizing global education.
Yeah, they're definitely pioneers.
Yeah.
They've shown us that it's possible
Right.
to create a truly global learning environment.
Yeah, and they've inspired us to keep pushing those boundaries.
Yeah,
So I think that's a great place to wrap up our deep dive.
that's good.
INSEAD is a pioneer, and their journey is far from over.
Definitely not.
But I think they've shown us that it is possible to create a
Yeah.
world where global education is within reach of everyone.
Well said.
So, to our listeners,
Yeah.
as you continue your own journey,
Mm-hmm.
remember what we've learned today.
Absolutely.
Embrace curiosity, challenge your assumptions,
For sure.
and never stop exploring the world and all its diverse perspectives.
I love that. And who knows, maybe someday you'll be sharing your own global story.
Right.
Inspiring others.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the world of INSEAD.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been fascinating. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.